Hi, I'm Duff Stoneson. I'm an LPC Associate Therapist at Just Mind, and I want to share about something that happened for me in the last year, which has massively shifted both how I think about my personal experience as well as the way I view my work as a therapist. I was diagnosed at 42 with ADHD. So I want to share a little bit about what I've figured out there, what I've learned from experts, in the hopes that it'll help somebody else too. The first thing we should name with ADHD is that the presentation can vary a lot from person to person. In terms of formal diagnosis, there are two main types that make up three particular diagnoses. But overall, I think it's important to say up front that ADHD does not just look like one thing. It can look like a lot of stuff. One of the big things, I think, is that as a culture, when we think about ADHD, a lot of us think of it in terms of the first of the types, the hyperactive presentation. This is your stereotypical 6-year-old boy who cannot sit still during school. The second type is called the inattentive presentation. This is more like forgetfulness, daydreaming, that kind of thing. The third type, by the way, is called the combined type, and I'm not saying a lot about that just because it speaks to people whose presentations are a combination of the two. Anytime we talk about formal diagnosis, it's really important to acknowledge that diagnostic criteria are the product of the culture that creates them. The DSM-5, which is the authority for the diagnostic criteria, primarily here in the US, really only talks about the things that are related to energy and attention, which, those track back to hyperactivity and inattention. But there are a lot of big pieces that also tie back to emotion that, in my experience, are sort of the things that people say, oh, that's ADHD? Well, yeah, I've definitely got that. Some examples are like rejection-sensitive dysphoria, which is a tendency to be really sensitive to feelings of being rejected. So I think it's important here to note that there's really two layers to ADHD. There are the neurological divergences themselves, which is things like executive dysfunction, struggling with attention, that sort of thing. But then there's also the relational and emotional piece that comes from what it's like growing up, being different and people not understanding that, and you not understanding it about yourself too. Often by the time somebody comes to therapy for this kind of thing, they've found ways to work around the neurological pieces, and so then it's hard to tell, well, they're not thinking about the relationship between their inattention or their hyperactivity as kids with the way people related to them. They just remember that people were impatient with them. So, I would say that if any of this rings a bell or just something in your gut says, that sounds interesting, read a book, watch a video, just get curious about your experience. And, there's the possibility of uncovering something that could be really helpful. Anyway, all right. Thanks for taking the time to listen and have a great day.